Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Film Appreciation Podcast. FAPS. Always remember that. We are fapping.
Last episode of 2024.
Correct. Even though this is being filmed start of January, these movies are 2024 movies.
Indeed, yeah.
And I'm Nick, and that's Marlon, Isaac, and...
No special introduction.
No fun words today.
No. We're down to business.
Our energy has been soured by a slight audio issue.
Well, as you can see, I have no microphone today. Hopefully the audio isn't too bad.
Yeah.
Basically just a cable somehow didn't work.
Apologies in advance.
Such is life. We'll make do, I suppose.
Indeed. Well,
on that note,
as we said, this is the last episode of 2024, but it's in 2025. Deal with it, you fucking dogs. Let's go.
My God.
Let's go.
Jesus. All right, let's go.
We're on. Go.
All right, to begin the podcast, we have an absolute beautiful film. Another beautiful film from another beautiful man. Robert Eggers. It's his fourth movie.
Yep.
Nosferatu. Classic vampire story, really. Based, obviously, on originally Dracula, but this is based on the Nosferatu movie.
Mm-hmm.
More or less follows the story of a woman who has some sort of relationship with this vampire who she summons basically. And the movie is basically Nosferatu wanting to get her back, and doing his ploys along the way. I feel like that's not the best introduction to it, but there's so much to be said, so I feel like it's hard to summarize. But
there's a lot of turning cogs in this watch of a movie. That's a pretty good analogy, actually. I'll stand with that. Yes, so you may have seen, because it actually got a decent amount of views, you may have seen that we did a little
Eggers Ranked.
Yeah, Eggers Ranked TikTok thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all, as in us three, all huge fans of Robert Eggers, love his stuff dearly. We did all of his movies again in lead up to this.
Yeah, one a week until Nosferatu came out.
Yeah, which was just such a great fun time. And this was probably our most hyped movie for a very long time, I think is probably a fair thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully it didn't, we'll say right now, it did not disappoint, because it was pretty fucking good.
No.
Yeah.
I think we all thoroughly enjoyed it, and we got to see it with 5 or 6 friends as well.
Yeah, we had a whole army there.
A little posse.
Yeah.
Which made the night thoroughly enjoyable. But so I guess we kick it off with the cast, just get it out of the way.
The cast.
What is that? Oh, who's in it?
Yeah, so you got Lily Rose Depp.
Lily Rose Depp is, what's her name, Ellen?
Yeah.
Nicholas Hoult. I can't remember the
He's
guy.
Thomas, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I always, because in my head, because in the original, in Dracula, the character's name is Jonathan Harker.
Yeah.
So anytime I see that guy...
This one's Thomas Hutter, I think it is.
I think that is right. Yeah, Thomas Hutter. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got Bill Skarsgård, obviously, as Nosferatu and heavy
Count
makeup.
Orlok. Come on.
Count Orlok.
Your lord. He's your lordship, my friend.
Yeah.
Count Orlok.
Address him appropriately.
Aaron Taylor-Johnson as the rich friend.
Friedrich Harding.
And then Willem Dafoe, Daddy Dafoe,
Yeah.
as
So
this
that's-
crazy psychologist.
Got to get that right in. Anytime
France.
Willem Dafoe turns up in a Robert Eggers movie, everyone in the crowd is always just always so keen, bro. I remember, I think his first audible sound in The Lighthouse is him farting.
Yeah.
And from that point on, we're like, yeah, we're totally on with this guy. And then he's in Northman just to pull his wang out, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah,
And he barks at Ethan Hawke.
as an oracle.
Yeah. And then in Nosferatu, he just turns up and is like, I don't know, what was he doing? He was sitting there in his house or something.
He just go away.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yeah.
And we were more than halfway through the film, and we're going, bro, this is already good. And then Willem Dafoe turns up, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
it's Willem Dafoe.
And he just has the greatest llines. They're all so...
Yeah. Well, he's the guy who gets to go, Nosferatu.
Yeah, he has that too. He has the big speech where he's figuring it out, It's
Yeah.
the vampire, Nosferatu.
Well, he's basically the detective
character.
He's not a detective, but that's essentially, he's the one who figures out what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, right away, I guess this brings up a very interesting theme in the movie, which is this tension between the modern scientific sort of enterprise and the obviously traditional spiritual and his character is one that travels between both worlds, you know, and that's why.
Because they said that he was sort of kicked out of wherever because
like,
he started genuinely believing in like mythological and supernatural ideas.
Yeah.
Well, and then the interesting thing is you say the modern scientific movement, but it's really early modern scientific movement. Because
what year is this?
The 1840s?
Yeah, so it's still quite new.
But like the thing is, we drain the blood because the woman's crazy.
Yeah.
Is the modern scientific solution to this psychosis or possession.
Which, because is it the mid 1800s that it's set?
Yeah, 1840s.
1840s.
I believe.
Right.
In a German town.
Correct.
And you mentioned this the other day, so Robert Eggers was originally a production designer.
Yeah.
And in every film, and in particularly Nosferatu, the set is incredible.
Yeah.
The ability to create a world is sort of unmatched, really.
Yeah.
Particularly like a period piece world.
Yeah. That is something what I think you realize when you watch a lot of movies is it's actually very rare that you fully get absorbed into the actual world of it. And that's not the story. I mean, the actual, just the living in that space where you can still be gripped by what you're watching when nothing thematically might be happening. You're just sort of, they might be having a fairly one-note conversation, but because you're in the world, you're sort of entranced in what you're watching.
This is something that I've sort of kind of half been thinking about every now and then regarding like the world. And I don't know if I'm even right about this, but at least it's a feeling I have where almost the Northman and this movie seem to not do as good a job at building the world as like the Lighthouse. And I think it's something to do with the fact that there's so many more sets, and it feels like there's so many more locations that for some reason the world just kind of feels like it's been built in a specific way so that you can go to those places that you have to go, and then there's no other parts to the world. Whereas like watching the Lighthouse, because you're in like this one isolated place, your brain's like, oh, there's so much more out there. And I don't know if like that's just something that sort of.
Well, I think that's more to do with thematically with what's going on. Because those two stories, The Witch as well, are isolated.
Yeah.
Well, The Witch is another thing.
The themes are about isolation.
Yeah.
But I think even though when I'm watching that though,
the fear of the unknown,
which makes the world feel much bigger.
Correct.
Yeah, but I don't know. Watching Nosferatu, occasionally I'd have the feeling where I was like, yeah, I'm like the world kind of feels like it's like being built like we're on this set. Like imagine like a linear like.
Yeah, well the problem is the worlds are much more vast.
Yeah.
You know, in the Northman, they travel across seas and across countries, and here, what's his name? Yeah, Nick Holt, Tom goes into Transylvania, you know, via horseback, and these are much more journey films than The Witch.
Yeah.
Or The Lighthouse, and in doing so, I think a lot less time is spent on each set.
I also just wonder if it's just because they are so well designed that it almost is like you're like looking out for how well designed they are, which occasionally, which isn't really that's just me, I guess. It's not a thing to do with the movie. It's me going like, oh wow.
But whereas, I mean, I guess it targets different aspects of what you might engage your brain. But like in Northman and Nosferatu, for me, like they are a lot of sort of we travel to this place and then to this place and then this place and see different stuff, and you don't often come back to any of that stuff, which I think actually makes it more. It feels more like a journey, and I think I'm more encaptured by the world and just the actual like the vastness of the world. But it's more engaging me. Perhaps it's not as engaging as the whole fear of the unknown, isolationist idea of Lighthouse and shit, where you're sitting there going, what could be out there? But instead you're going, isn't it amazing that all of this is out there? Yeah. Because like you think about the Northmen, you've got all that, like there's that one village at the start that they raid, and that's where he meets the sorceress, Bjork or whatever. And then you don't ever go back to that spot. And that village was very distinct compared to other ones and stuff. And Nosferatu is the same, especially when Thomas leaves for the first time and he like hangs out in the gypsy town. And there's all the shit that goes on there. Like there was that...
The ritual.
The virgin girl on the horse, I believe is what they said it was.
Yeah.
And all of that. And all of that was so interesting going, look at this world. But then you don't see it again, which is very interesting.
Well, I think... perhaps in comparison, other than The Lighthouse and also more so than The Lighthouse, I think this would be his film with the most time spent indoors.
I'm not sure.
Like,
Maybe
The
actually.
Witch, a lot is outside.
Yeah.
The Lighthouse,
The Northman is almost all outside.
yeah, and The Lighthouse, they still spend a hell of a lot of time outside. I think a lot of it is Ellen in that mansion, Thomas and
Yeah,
Count
yeah,
Orlok
yeah.
in the castle. I think, but the problem is it doesn't feel claustrophobic like The Lighthouse does when the time is spent inside.
Yeah, but
It still feels vastly open.
But it's a much larger story, you know, like...
Well, I don't have a problem with it at the end of the day.
No, but it's just, I think that, and I agree, like, perhaps you could say The Witch. I don't think it's fair to compare The Lighthouse because The Lighthouse is just so different and its goals are so different and there's literally only like 2 people in the movie. But with Nosferatu, it is a bigger story and there's a lot more characters in it that you're given a lot of time with. Like, you've got Willem Dafoe, you got the other doctor, Ralph Ineson, who was the head of that, like, psych ward.
Yeah,
You've got obviously Tom, his mate's wife, the count's assistant. There's like a lot of characters. Whereas The Witch is like, it's a family.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to, and a lot of the family don't get much airtime. It's basically like Anya, her brother, and the parents, and that's kind of it in Black Phillip. But let's go more into it. Like, what did we really like about it? What sort of stood out the most about the film? Because I have an easy one, which I'm Bill Skarsgård.
of course,
Absolutely.
Oh, that
amazing performance. Like, and we will talk about Lily Rose Depp because she is amazing and definitely deserves her flowers for sure. But Bill Skarsgård is straight up unrecognizable in the same way, like, there's a lot of those performances now. It's really interesting that the whole prosthetic work and allowing an actor to completely disappear and create their own character, like
Colin Farrell is
the Penguin, who just won a Golden Globe, which was fucking amazing to see that.
and deserved.
Yeah, but to see something like that get accredited is great. And this is the same thing. I really hope that Bill Skarsgård gets some sort of awards because he's just the voice.
I was about to say the voice. I mean, immediately when he's when Hutter is coming into the castle and the voice is just sort of bringing him in, and it's like he's getting like hypnotized. Like he can't not follow the voice.
Yeah,
and then the breathing.
Yeah,
when he's
The Darth Vader inspired.
They're doing exactly that. That's exactly right. It's 100% to me. A little bit of a Darth Vader thing going there, where it's like he says something.
But
like,
this was another example of how less is more can actually really build up a character.
Yeah,
and it's something I've always thought about with Mandalorian. I know this is kind of a weird connection, but Mandalorian I find so impressive that he can be as engaging as a character and expressive when you don't see his face. It's just the same helmet expression.
Yeah,
and with Nosferatu, for most of the movie, except towards the end, you don't even see his face. Like, especially the whole intro where
when he's introduced,
it's all cast in shadow.
Yeah, they never have even blurred a full thing of his face. It's always like sort of his nose,
or from
or
behind,
his hands or something. And it makes
slowly reveal what he looks like.
It makes it so much more sinister until you get to that very end, which we'll get to later. But where it's like this full wide bright light shot, and you go, "Fucking hell, look at that thing!"
Yeah,
but
and like you're also like at the start, you're sitting there trying to figure out how Thomas Hodder is feeling about what he's seeing, and because it's slowly getting revealed, you have the same experience that he has.
Yeah,
and it's extremely scary.
Yeah, what I was about to say is, Eggers has an incredible ability to manipulate feeling in that sort of uneasy and more so unsettling and disturbing sense. The Witch isn't a necessarily disturbing film, but it's fucking freaky.
It's a movie that like haunts you, even though it's not that scary.
Yeah, unsettling. And in this as well, this has that more so jump scare.
Well, I would say this is the most traditional horror.
Yeah,
of all of his movies.
And it has
The Witch is very unconventional.
Yeah,
what it does.
But like I just recall at one point, one of the jump scares, I saw some other person's legs flail up in the air.
Was it when Thomas Hodder goes to kill him in the?
That was the one that got me.
Yeah,
bro. I was like,
in the crypt.
Well, I knew it was going to happen, but I also still got jump scared.
But also, that's a great wang out. Like,
the wang out.
Whoa! You're like, okay, bro.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible ability, is to know something's coming and still be frightened when it happens.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, someone's legs just went absolutely everywhere, and it was awesome to see.
This is a tangent, but another movie that has a jump scare like that is Mulholland Drive.
Yeah,
It's so
behind
slow.
the garbage.
It's so slow.
That was one of the biggest jump scares ever.
But it's so slow. Every time I watch it, I'm still like, oh. It's like you know what's coming, and it's the slowest thing, but it's so scary for some reason.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
it's because it's not the jump scare that makes it scary. It's the tension before it. And that's something that so many horror movies don't understand. They just think, throw in a jump scare. Throw in a jump scare.
No, but
whereas the
that's-
jump scare is to relieve the tension. That's like, yeah.
But that's the whole thing about like the best horror is the ones that overall don't go for cheap scares.
Yes, exactly.
It's more about disturbing you.
Yeah.
Which is why like they kind of almost don't do a jump scare is the best way to do a jump scare.
Yeah.
And that made me think of still I think the best one ever was in Hereditary for me. Because I remember when they do it in such a slow way where it's coming out and there's actually a couple of seconds where you're computing what you're looking at and then you realize what's happening and then you for me like. And in Hereditary, there's this amazing moment in the end where he goes up into the attic and his mum's trying to get in and there's silence and you think, oh, there's going to be a jump scare with her in it. But the camera like pans around and it shows the ghosts of his grandparents standing there in the corner and they're just looking at him and there's no music, nothing. It just shows them. And I remember sitting there watching it going, what the like after seeing them, it was amazing. I was like, what the hell? And Nosferatu definitely does that. I wouldn't say it's as good as that because it does do more traditional jump scares, but it doesn't use them much, and it's more about the tension and sort of
I can only think of 3.
the first one at the start.
It's like 3 big ones.
Yeah,
But yeah, I don't really remember when.
One's towards the end when they're back in Ellen's house.
Yeah.
And then the crypt, and then one at the.
but it's more about just the absolute pure evil terror that this thing
Well, that's the thing.
possesses.
Well, it's a demon.
And that's the other
is
thing
what-
about this movie is it's
Defoe.
also a gothic movie, and so it's not pure like just horror. Like it has to have the gothic genre in there, which it does brilliantly.
That's something that I really appreciated, not only about this, but in general with all of Eggers' movies, is he doesn't try to put his own spin on any of this stuff. He's trying to present it as authentically as he can. Like the Viking stuff, he tried to make it as inherently, this is exactly what Norse mythology and how they acted was like and what they believed and did. And with Nosferatu, especially with like telling the story of the vampire, the original novel.
Well, have you both read Dracula?
I read it in high school.
Yeah, I remember. I haven't either.
I haven't read it.
Is
But-
it true to?
No, well, it takes liberties, but thematically, I think is what's more important. Like,
yeah.
But
you don't want to just tell. It's not Dracula anyway. It's Nosferatu. So.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is just in the fact that the vampire, the Nosferatu, the Dracula, whatever you want to call it, is a figure of terror and nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fucking Twilight or these other things where it might
Where
be
it's like
a musical vampire or he's actually got feelings. It's like, no this thing is a creature
that's exactly
of utter
right.
nightmare.
And he has the line where he says, like, I can't remember exactly how he says it, but he's like, I am appetite. That's all he is. He just needs to be satiated, and that's why he wants her. And that's an interesting thing because, like, what the vampire, or Nosferatu specifically in this movie represents is death, plague.
Well, Defoe says he was a demon sent up from hell.
Yeah.
And he is a demon, essentially, and it's not as you said, some
Well,
handsome.
actually, that was an interesting thing.
Some handsome vampire that just woos women
Batman's not
naturally.
playing.
That was an interesting thing in the movie because I couldn't tell if Nosferatu was a guy who was living and then became a vampire or if he was like from hell because it seemed there was a sort of tension in how he was treated. And I don't know if that was on purpose or if I just...
Well, I liked Eggers'
didn't pick
idea
up enough on it.
of him being basically this undead, old Transylvanian man.
Yeah, which I
So
thought...
he's dressed in a big like fur coat and a big mustache, which is what
Yeah.
they used to look like at that
Traditionally,
time. Yeah, which I found that very, very apt and interesting.
Well, yeah. The problem with that is Orlok himself talks about being, from a long line of lords, and being an actual family of royalty per se. But then Defoe talks about Nosferatu as being a demon sent up from hell.
Okay, maybe it's something like this. I assume... Okay, now I remember. Because this is why he wanted the girl, Ellen. I believe she's supposed to become Nosferatu.
Right.
So Nosferatu is sort of the darkness that engulfs.
And so it's trying to
So
cleanse.
Orlok has been engulfed by Nosferatu. And I think that's also like why there's the whole deal with him. You've been cast in his shadow, or his whatever the line is.
Yeah, like with the hand going over the fucking gothic city.
That is an amazing shot.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's something like that.
yeah, that makes.
I think it was
a lot
its
of
own
sense.
sort of version of the famous original shadow shot in the original Nosferatu, which
Yeah.
is where Nosferatu walks up the stairs.
Yeah.
And I was expecting them to do that again because it's famous. Like he's coming up the stairs to Ellen's room, but it's his shadow, and it's the shadow of the staircase.
Well, they did
It's all
stuff like that though, for sure.
Yeah, but I was
It's-
expecting, but it's
yeah.
so famous, and I was expecting them to recreate that. But I think that hand thing was his own sort of version.
Well,
of
and then-
Doing the master shot.
Yeah.
And then
yes.
I was listening to Defoe and Eggers talk about just in general their relationship and in particular Nosferatu because it's obviously the most recent film. And Eggers gives so much credit to his cinematographer who's been with him in every film to date of the four. And a lot of people's favorite shot in this film is the sort of folk fairy tale horses with the light.
Oh, that was great.
Oh yeah,
And that has like a
Undead
really
horses.
eerie
yeah.
The music is great too.
drawing sort of aura to it.
You feel like you're in the dream of it.
But Eggers says his favourite shot is just the one where Nosferatu comes from the curtain
Yeah, at the start.
as the shadow
Yeah,
and Ellen is coming toward. And essentially he says there's so much going on in that scene. They spent so long working on it. And what you don't realise is so good about that shot is it's one take. So because you're paying attention
because
to
she's
the...
also floating. As
Yeah,
well.
she's floating up and there's the shadow coming in.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the sound mixing and how he worked really closely with the mixer to make sure that the curtains were louder than normal so that people weren't just focused on
So good.
Ellen
man.
and
Yeah.
they saw the shadow moving through the... I think that is also brilliant. And
I
it
think-
just shows his level and attention to detail and skill.
Yeah, for me though, and I think even more so what encompasses my love for this movie is the shot where Thomas basically is like, I'm going to get the fuck out of here because he wakes up and has a little bite or whatever it was. And he's like, I'm out of here. And then found him in the coffin and goes to stab him and he wakes up and gets chased. And there's the point where Nosferatu basically possesses him to open the door.
Yeah, that's what I was
And they open the door and it's all shadow and he's Nosferatu standing there with his big coat and his dogs.
Dogs,
And
yes.
it's all, you can barely see anything. He's just standing there. There's no noise. He's just there with his dogs. And it's like, fuck. Holy shit. And yeah. Also the actual him feeding is so horrific.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because he goes like over the heart.
Oh,
That's where he's sucking
yeah,
the
at the
blood.
end.
Moles.
I mean, he guys one guy in the neck, but mostly when he's got like Ellen or Thomas, he stands over them and feeds like right out of the heart. It's like,
And talk about how funny his shagging is.
Well, when he's eating.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that sort
Well,
of
that's,
weird...
that is something I wanted to mention is that the movie totally gets the sexual aspect of this story. Like, it's...
but I think it brought it to prominence.
That's
more
what,
than
it
any
definitely
other
made it more... Yeah, it makes it more prominent.
adaptation.
But that's something that's sort of been, I feel like, discussed about Dracula for its entire existence is this sort of undertone of, like, you know, just sexuality in general.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of what is at the forefront thematically in this movie. There's other stuff that people have said about it, like that it's racist because it tries to present like Eastern people as evil, which to me is so obviously wrong. Like, because obviously, you know, Transylvania is where Count Orlok's from and
Yes.
so on, and he's whatever.
What, like
But
the
the-
way they portray gypsies as well.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
but the thing that totally gets wrong is that it's clearly not, because the people with these Eastern spiritual views are the ones who have access to defeating the darkness. And
Well, that's where Willem gets his information, is from text by them, isn't it? That's when he opens.
yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's,
Well, I don't know if it's specifically. Yeah, no. He talks about how the gypsies
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
ritual. Yeah, but that's exactly right. And I think, I mean, it's kind of like Nietzsche's point in Birth of Tragedy, where this is later on in the book, but he talks about how the modern scientific enterprise and rational, you know, from Socrates and so on, basically has led to nihilism, and this is basically Nietzsche's whole fucking work, to be fair, is talking about how in the modern world, because of our scientific you know, enterprise and so on, there's people with no value because all they think about is rationality and so on. And we lose those sources of meaning, and I think maybe that's in this movie as well, is sort of how we can transfigure our modern experience that is of course scientific, which is good, with getting meaning back, so we're not like walking around like, fuck bro, my life is pointless. But yeah, and then there's like obviously a lot of things like that one TikTok that was like, if you like this movie, you have the same traits as a sex offender or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's again a total misreading of the film, because I don't think the movie is about like, you know, I think it's even really about anything like that at all, because it's sort of, I think it explores Ellen as sort of even just being like a queer character in terms of sexuality. It explores even like political stuff as well in terms of giving up and trading and like. So I don't know. I think the movie is so much more. I haven't really done enough thinking about it, to be fair, but it's so much more interesting than just like being so one-dimensional to be racist and, I don't know, promoting rape or something. It's just so obviously not doing that to me.
But to me, I don't even think about it that far, to be fair. I watched it and I'm just looking for a good, like, creepy story.
Which you can do, for sure.
And that's what it does. Like, don't get me wrong, there's layers to it, but overall, the primary goal of this movie is just for you to go, fuck me, this guy's scary as hell, and just to enjoy the ride, this demonic ride.
Well, yeah, you obviously get like the sort of you get put into the feelings at the time of like female suppression of voice and what they can do and can't do, and mania with the plague and all these things, and you get transported back to what belief systems were like then. But I don't think it's I bring up like a critique of modern day belief systems at the same time, because it's certainly, if anything, critiquing those and making it interesting for us. But at the end of the day, Eggers has an ability to just make fucking awesome films.
Yeah.
That you can sit there and just go, like, be immersed in the world and in the story and just fully absorb it for what is visually there, rather than, say, deep underlying thematic views. I think it's Nosferatu more so is certainly a case where it's more surface level. I think at least less easily extrapolated than The Witch and The Lighthouse. Yeah. Same as The Northman, it seems to less be about... The Northman is actually quite easy to determine themes of family and betrayal.
The Northman, people are saying like Nosferatu is his most digestible movie, but I would think it would definitely be The Northman.
Well, my problem with The Northman is its length. I find The Northman a bit long.
Do you?
I do. I love it, don't get me wrong.
Is The Witch not his most digestible?
That's what I think.
Because for me, The Witch...
But anyone can watch The Witch. And
well, I think anyone can... To be honest, I think anyone can watch any of them except maybe The Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse is his least digestible.
Yeah. But with The Witch, I would just say it's the most, besides The Lighthouse, it's the most unconventional.
I think people can still enjoy it and understand what happens.
The Witch is also shorter.
It's probably actually more interesting for just people who don't really watch many movies because of the fact that it's so unconventional. They wouldn't have seen anything like it.
True.
But it's not like unconventional in a way where it's like, what the hell am I watching? It's unconventional in a way where it's like, interesting. And it gets you to enjoy it. Whereas I think Nosferatu and like The Northman are so kind of intricate that I could totally see how a disinterested audience member could just get lost and not care.
Right. Sure. But I kind of like, don't get me wrong, it's kind of what you prefer. And I sort of like all of it equally, to be fair. But I quite like those sort of just big journey movie. You know, it's just my all-time favorite trilogy, Lord of the Rings. That's what it is. And Lord of the Rings is very similar in some ways to how I would compare it, more so to The Northman, in the sense that you go on this big journey and you see a bunch of different stuff, and it doesn't really come back to that stuff. It's just we're here, and then we're here, and then we're here. And it's more about how it impacts the characters, which I think Nosferatu is kind of like a blending of that scale and scope of The Northman to his more original like witch type thing. It's kind of a blend of those things.
Well, what Eggers said is, I mean, obviously he's going to incorporate strong themes into it, but he said he wanted to strip Nosferatu back to just a fairy tale, a gothic fairy tale,
Yeah.
and he does it.
How good is the ending shot? In terms of even like the fairy tale stuff, the person who makes the sacrifice, and then the shot is so beautiful of him like lying on top with flowers and
Nosferatu skips leg day.
Yeah, awfully like fucking disturbing too.
Well, that's
like
that's
that
right.
dried
I mean,
fucking like fruit looking sultana.
It's just so great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Eggers has a single movie that has a bad last shot.
No, that's actually, he always nails endings.
Yeah. He's so good at ending.
His ending's always so good. The reason why, though, and I think this is why The Lighthouse stands above, is that Lighthouse is the only one where the ending is actually representing something else. Like
it's like
it's
Prometheus.
And sort of what happens with Willem Dafoe, like Poseidon and things like that. But the ending, you could take it just as the ending, but also it is actually representing something else, and it links back to the whole idea of what the movie is sort of saying.
Well, I mean, even like the ending shot of the witch is them floating, right?
Yeah.
I think that's still like it's just not doing the same sort of representative work. Like whereas the reason the Lighthouse ending shot is so interesting because it's a reference to a bunch of other mythology, whereas the witch is just you can relate it to the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And I think that's usually what he does, apart from the Lighthouse.
Well, and then in the Northman, they're both dead.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the last shot is he gets taken to Valhalla.
Yeah,
like that's
on the horse with the Valkyrie. But right before that, you've got them both dead on the volcano.
Yeah.
And then that obviously speaks to vengeance, revenge, and all those sort of themes that the Northman carries through it. And then this one, as Isaac was saying, was about sacrifice.
Yeah. Power dynamics as well. I think this movie does a lot. Like, it's insane.
And then also the ability to stay true to fairy tale genre, as you said, with the flowers around it, and that sort of tragedy as well.
Yeah, I definitely think it's the most packed movie in terms of
thematically.
Yeah, like in terms of you could extrapolate so much out of it. That like even though perhaps in scale the Northman might be bigger, the Northman is you can just sort of watch it, and after like twice I think you get it, but it's just an enjoyable film.
I think especially if you like have any sort of idea of like the Shakespeare sort of adaptation.
Yeah, whereas Nosferatu, there's so many scenes, like there's like little scenes, and it just sort of keeps there's so much stuff.
It's something I said to you after the movie. Like obviously Dracula the book and all of its iterations has so many different readings and so many different interpretations and people seeing emphasis in different areas, and that's why it was really interesting after watching Nosferatu. For me, I was trying to figure out like which area did Eggers put the most emphasis on. Then I think it's like this sort of, I think A, sexuality, and then B, the political sort of stuff. But yeah, I think he does such a great job at everything. Like the movie is so excellent. It's actually.
But I think he just did it because, as I said, I think it's his biggest movie in the sense of there's the most stuff and there's the most characters.
There is the most characters.
And for me, I think the biggest thing for me that he did well is the characters. I found all of them very distinctive and all very interesting
and compelling.
Because some people when we came out didn't like Aaron Taylor Johnson in the movie, which I actually really disagree with. For me, he really worked.
I don't understand what they didn't like.
And
just because he's Craven.
Well, I get because I don't think he's that great an actor usually. No, I think he's quite average,
I think he's getting better though. I mean, Fall Guy.
The Fall Guy, he was pretty bad, and I thought he was.
But
pretty average.
I think the difference is
it's a different movie.
You give a character who generally plays unserious people the chance to play a serious role, and most of the time they will step up.
Yeah, he does a good job with that.
But he's partially also the comedic relief.
Yeah,
for a bit of it, which I think he does well. Like he's a good comedic actor.
He reminded me actually a bit of Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. Yeah. Like just with the physical appearance.
Yeah.
And then talking also about physical appearance, you got Nosferatu who looks just like Vlad the Impaler with the massive strip mustache.
Well, that's what Dracula is based on.
Exactly.
But we will get to Lily Rose Depp because she does deserve like so much credit because really the whole movie is actually about her and it builds up to her. Like her character is just building up to the final part of the movie where she wins, if you will. But Ralph Ineson is so great. It's always good to see him pop back up because he's so great in The Witch. Willem Dafoe comes in, is just Willem Dafoe, so you know he's epic. And I mean, they don't really have to characterize and develop most of them to still be engaging and likable. I mean, because some of those actors are just good, charismatic actors that you'll just like anyway.
Yeah.
But it's still distinctive in their own right in the film. But for me, the standouts were, Willem, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Lily Rose Depp, and Bill Skarsgård. But I thought they were all great. I wish Emma Corrin got a bit more to do, which was Aaron Taylor's wife.
Why?
Yeah.
Like, because the part with her and their kids was easily the most fucked part of the movie.
Yeah, you didn't like that one bit.
Insane.
Oh
Like in
my
terms
God.
of, yeah.
Disturbing. I went, oh, fuck. Like,
Just eating children.
It went there, bro. I was like, holy shit.
I had the same reaction. I looked at Ollie like,
Yeah. Well,
I was like,
I was sitting
holy
next
crap.
to Marlon, and sort of while I was watching the movie, I was kind of sitting there like that. And I've gone, oh, fuck. Like, holy crap. But she is also a fantastic actress. And I don't know why. I guess because there's just not enough time, maybe. But
Well, yeah, it is only just over 2 hours.
yeah. But I'm pretty sure, like, her character's death, I forget what her name was. Her death was actually off screen. I thought she was still alive for a second.
Anna Harding.
yeah, she dies off screen.
Yeah, because Nosferatu, there's the really terrifying shot of the kids, and Nosferatu like walks to the door, and then
And then it cuts to the funeral, right?
yeah, and the wife sort of looks at him, and she's like, and then it cuts, and then I thought just the kids were dead, and maybe he left her alive, but then no, she's just buried.
The other thing as well with her character is her relationship with Ellen.
Yeah,
I feel like that's one thing that deserved to be cooked up a little bit more because I thought it was quite interesting. And I don't know, I guess it's just not important enough to what Eggers wants to do, and it can be just kind of left out, but I don't know. That's actually obviously the other obvious thing about this movie compared to all the others is that Ellen, or the girl character, is put on display as the main part of the story.
yeah.
Whereas,
Well, because like in The Witch, it's not clear that Anya is.
well, I just mean even in terms of the Dracula story.
Oh, sure.
Like,
because it's more Thomas's character.
yeah,
right?
yeah, like the Jonathan Harker characters. I mean, they obviously the other characters are important, but it's always sort of like he is the dude.
Yeah.
Whereas in this movie, he's just kind of like, he's kind of there so that, you know, Ellen's character can have decisions to make and so on. You know,
She is the character with whom people are reacting to
exactly.
throughout the whole movie.
She is, yeah, exactly right. And even right, Nosferatu's whole business is he needs her to accept him willingly and in sound
without
mind,
force.
which is so funny to me because he obviously.
She's still not willing though.
But the other thing
Which I
that's
found
so
very weird.
funny is that he obviously coerced.
Coerced her into doing it.
No, not her, but Thomas into signing the divorce thing.
Yeah.
So he didn't do it in sound mind or
Yeah, that's right.
willingly. So why does that?
It didn't.
It's
really
brilliant
phase
because it
me.
represents how Nosferatu is totally corrupt and
Yeah, and it's just a bullshitter.
Yeah.
You know, but
he just needs to have psychological like belief that she really meant it.
yeah. But Lily Rose, going into the movie, I knew that she was like acclaimed for the movie, and people were talking a lot about it. And at the start, I was kind of going, "Really? Why?" Like, because she wasn't doing much.
Yeah.
And obviously, as the film goes on, until like to the point where she's returned, like she has, Count Orlok has returned to the city, and they know he's in the city, and it's like, holy shit, he's here now, and the plague is happening, and it's like the final act of the movie. That's really when she came into it. She had that really amazing scene with Nicholas Hoult,
Is that
the sex scene.
yeah? When
before-
she becomes possessed.
Yeah, but before that, where
man.
she's sort of just mad roasting him and going nuts. It was so good.
Well, I think the best bit is in that sequence is when they are mid fun time, and then it starts turning into her fucking Count Orlok, and like that intricate pleasure, and then back into her own character, and then the sadness of that relationship.
Which is like that one shot on the first night that he comes to visit her, and there's so much like sexual tension, and like it is such a great scene because there's so much different like stuff happening. There's the sexual tension, there's the like sort of saving the world type shit, and like, oh, there's so much happening. It's so great. There's something else I want to say. What do I want to say? I can't remember.
But anyway, Lily Rose Depp is incredible.
Amazing.
Let's say our praises now.
Because I actually watched that show, The Idol. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Because I've never seen anything she's been in.
Yeah, so I saw her in The Idol, and I don't blame her for that show, but that show was like so bad. But it was so bad that it was funny because it had the Weeknd in it.
Yes, that's that.
And he was so fucking bad.
Yeah, didn't he make it?
Yeah, it's so funny, bro. He plays this character who just gets to have sex with like the hottest chick in LA and just has sex with other chicks. It's so shit and ridiculous.
Yeah.
But in that, she was also really, really bad. And I was thinking, is she bad or is it like the script is bad? And clearly the script was bad because she's fucking unbelievable in Nosferatu.
Yeah, like
The possession stuff especially.
She's
is
almost
so-
too good, bro.
what I was about to say is a lot of acting at the moment, and great acting is more so the body language and delivery, but Lily has this ability in Nosferatu to contort and control her body incredibly, and it's very not slapstick, but I forget the actual acting term, but just incredibly visceral and in body acting, more so than just
It's a
the
very
delivery
it's a
and
very-
dialogue. Yeah.
Her face is super important in it, though. Her facial performance is really what makes it, because there's so much of her in a bed and it's just a shot close up of her, or like when she's getting possessed, it's just like you're just seeing from the neck up,
Yeah.
and she has to basically do all that organically, like the eye roll thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's all her like doing that,
Yeah.
which I can't even do it. It's crazy.
Yeah, very impressive. So, like, have you guys seen Tusk or anything she's been in?
No, other than The Idol.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, so I was very impressed. Look forward to seeing if she's in anything else, to be honest, because that was intense.
I think I was going to say that this is already, I think, Egger's most financially successful movie. It's been really, really popular, which I think is great because that means he'll be able to make more stuff. But the biggest thing I think it will do is she will now actually be treated as a great actress and not being Johnny Depp's daughter or anything like that. It's like, oh no, Lily Rose Depp can she's got some talent, bro. She can
Still an Epo, baby.
She can still do some shit,
Yeah.
which I think is great. Like, it's good for her.
Yeah.
But, like, when you listen to Eggers and Defoe talk about Nosferatu, he started trying to make it 10 years ago. And then Defoe, almost like a fatherly, like, best friend sort of figure, goes like, yeah, and you weren't ready. Like, when talking about trying to make it originally, he's like, I'm so glad you didn't make it.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. And what I enjoy most about Eggers' films, other than the actual experience of watching them, is his relationship with Defoe. Because Defoe is incredibly prolific, and it's almost, I imagine, similar to Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yeah.
How
With Emma Stone.
just the mutual respect between Defoe and the auteur, and how he's given such sort of license, but doesn't use it and respects what the director wants.
But there's that for sure. But for me, and I would say this is big for Defoe and Eggers, but more so for Yorgos and Emma Stone, is just the complete and 100% trust that the actor has in their director.
Exactly.
Like, I will do whatever the hell you want me to do. I don't care. Like, obviously, The Lighthouse is where he got shown the most. That's only when he was like the lead. But in any of these movies, like, Defoe will do whatever, and Emma Stone's the same. Emma Stone will do the weirdest shit ever for Yorgos Lanthimos.
It's just incredible trust,
Yeah.
as you said, and incredible relationships.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who initiated the contact, but it was after The Witch. I think it was one or the other said, I need to meet this guy. And they organized a dinner in Canada where at the time Eggers wasn't really affording much at all because he was still financially, I think, in debt from The Witch or something like. And Defoe paid for his dinner and they had like a huge conversation, and then that sparked the relationship for The Lighthouse and so on. And it's just super interesting to see that shared respect between a director and an actor so much.
But that was, and I think it's a special thing because that was a very old Hollywood thing, is back when
we look at Scorsese.
The sort of duo of actor and director always making good work together, and you don't see that much recently, and now it's kind of is coming back. You could also take like I mean, we'll see because it hasn't done too much, but like Greta Gerwig and Saoirse Ronan, maybe that's another pairing where works so well together with the material. But yeah, as you said, Scorsese, De Niro, Quentin Tarantino, and maybe Samuel L. Jackson, and then you could go really far back and go like John Ford and John Wayne. You know, these guys who just they worked so well because they just know each other exactly what they can do, and it just creates a really authentic.
Well, also,
experience.
I think it makes something to look forward to as well. It's like everyone.
You just know they're going to cook.
For instance, Dafoe. Everyone loves Dafoe, even for his quirky and funny and silly work 20 years ago. But now he's just like a cult figure, sort of in the sense that everyone loves him for anything he touches, even if it's shit. Dafoe is funny or this or that, and he's just been so prolific recently. And it's just, okay, so the next film Eggers is making is a medieval tale called The Night, right? If Dafoe's in that, which I think he is, because Dafoe goes, I look forward to working with you on our next project in this interview. That's going to be fucking awesome too.
Yeah.
And it's like, I cannot wait for this relationship to happen again.
Yeah. But it's just, I mean, Dafoe especially he's just one of the bravest actors. Like, he just doesn't care. He will do whatever. You know, he's made a lot of films with Lars von Trier, who's weird as hell. And
Antichrist.
Exactly. And then like Eggers and just all these different things.
Scorsese,
he just throws himself 100% into the movie, and that's admirable. And I think you got to give that to like Lily Rose Depp in this one. That's probably why she's such a standout, is because she just gave everything, didn't hold anything back.
When you get an opportunity to work with, at this point, Eggers is a huge director.
Well, he's bigger now because this is a genuinely big.
Yeah, but film. I mean, in auteur. In the auteur space, as you said, you think he's solidified himself as an auteur now. Yeah, well, because
you know, a lot of the golden auteurs, Scorsese he won't be around much longer. I mean, making movies. Hopefully, he lives longer, but you know, and Quentin's going to retire soon. You know, and blah, and so it's all kind of coming down. And now we're finally seeing like new directors, Yorgos, and all this.
And I was saying to Isaac, it's so exciting that if that's the direction Eggers wants to go down, we're going to have decades left of Eggers films. Whereas everything we've grown up on is slowly fading away, as you said.
Yeah.
So that's awfully exciting. And
it's just a good thing as well that people are now sort of becoming more excited for stuff like this than
Marvel.
Well, not Marvel, but just like big superhero or blockbuster stuff. And that's not because those are bad movies.
But they're getting excited and
the studio didn't put effort into making them good. They just thought people would watch schlock. And it's like, no, people want engaging stories. And when they got shit enough, people were like, we'll go watch something else. And then they realized that engaging original films is actually what they want.
Bad Boys for Life and shit. Fuck yeah.
Like,
no one IP like spam.
No one gives a rat's anymore. No one cares. And they just want like authentic, great stories.
Yeah.
But that's why Eggers is special with that though, because he almost gives a blockbuster quality element to it because his films are so distinct that you're still getting transported away like you might watch a Marvel movie, in the sense that when you watch a Marvel movie, you've got like crazy visuals and you know, a lot of visual interest, but perhaps a shit story, maybe, depending on what it is. But Eggers is both.
And you get the big actors too.
True. Yeah.
Which you also get with Eggers.
Well, having said that, some big actors might try and get with him now, like do some stuff.
Whatever he has though.
Who?
Eggers.
Who? Yeah, no, but who?
Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe.
Well, Robert Pattinson, when they did it, was not a big actor.
I think
that was during his renaissance.
He's
much bigger now because of Batman and whatever. But
he had less serious roles, but he was a huge actor. He had huge, Twilight, Harry Potter,
had a massive
Good Time.
fan base.
You know, he's everyone young adored him already.
Yeah, and then Northman. You know, like he has had a bunch of big name actors.
Ethan Hawke.
But I think you're right that he's going to get even more.
Well,
but I mean like Leo or DiCaprio or Brad Pitt or somebody like that.
I think that works.
The big dogs. You know?
I think that works is sort of Eggers gets to pick. I think Eggers is at the point where he gets to pick who he wants.
Yeah.
And he has the ability and the money and now the sort of figure to reject as well. And what I like about him is he doesn't use the biggest stars because his films are so rooted in a specific time and a specific period and a specific place. I don't want to see Leonardo DiCaprio in fucking Germany in the 1800s.
It almost feels like you kind of, especially with something like Nosferatu, you needed actors who maybe aren't as big because those huge actors come with a certain level of aura to them.
Yeah, that's
where you sit there and it's like Brad Pitt and you go, that's Aldo Rain, or that's
I'm watching Brad Pitt.
Yeah, exactly.
or whatever, or whatever. You know?
Which Willem Dafoe could have if he wasn't so good at just being
But Willem
the character.
Dafoe, not only is he such a good character actor, but most of his career is still actually indie movies. He's been in big.
You're not looking at him like, oh, he's this guy.
Yeah, because he's never the lead in a huge blockbuster. He's either the villain where he gets to be like totally nuts, like in Spider-Man, or he's a very minor character. Like he often does supporting roles, which is why he's in so many fucking things because he's like the little character.
Yeah.
So, I think we're getting slightly sidetracked, but Nosferatu,
excellent,
dope.
I have one more thing to say.
Hit me.
Yeah.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier, just sort of the relationship between Nosferatu and the plot even, but how easy it actually is for him to get from Transylvania to what's the deal again? Germany.
Germany, yeah.
To get to Germany, right?
Like how he gets on the ship.
It's so easy for him.
Yeah.
The real challenge in the story is not the physical battle of getting there. It's the psychological battle between Ellen wanting to be good and whatever, and the evil. And I think that's something we didn't even touch on because she asked like the question, which is so like, it's just so like out there when she just goes, does evil come from within or?
Oh yeah.
It's
was
like
that at the start, right?
I can't remember when it happened.
I feel like it's when she wakes up from one of her
she wakes up
possessions.
at some point.
Did she ask Defoe that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like she's like
right.
rambling, and then all of a sudden she has this perfect moment of clarity where she asks this question. And I think that's Eggers literally going like, all right, guys,
This is
start thinking about it. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Unfortunately, I didn't do much thinking about it, so I'm sorry, Robert Eggers.
Well, yeah.
But I'm definitely going to try and catch it in the theatre
I want to
again
watch it again, yeah.
before we
Jet off.
jet off.
Yes, indeed.
Faps on tour, guys.
Faps on tour.
All right. Ratings time.
9.
I'm a 9 as well.
Ditto.
Excellent.
Beautiful 9.
Eggers, 4 films, nothing below 9.
Yeah.
Oh, what a goat. He's my goat, bro.
Yes.
Such a goat.
If he gets like another... How many more movies above certain rating do you need for him to be a goat?
He's already a goat.
Like your personal goat. I mean,
I
don't
think
know if
like
you-
3 more.
Yeah, I reckon 3 more great movies and he is
Yeah.
firmly
Well,
placed.
but if he makes one more movie and that's 5 movies where all of them are 9 out of 10 or above,
Yeah.
And that's in a row too. That's back to back
that's
to
back
back.
to back.
Yeah, you don't get that very
you
often.
know.
Well, it's like you see this
Even
guy.
Scorsese has a couple of duds.
You see this guy on TikTok that goes trying to find the best director's run ever, like 7 or 5 movie run, and like they talk about Hitchcock or Kurosawa or Kubrick, and Kubrick's the one that has the most.
Kubrick.
Yeah,
would probably
Kubrick, sure.
be.
Because I think he has like his
Or
Well, post.
or you could maybe say sort of early 2000s Chris Nolan.
Yeah, I was about to say Nolan has, but it's sort of Batman Begins sort of gets in there a little bit, and like not as good as the other ones he makes.
But you could go like Prestige, Dark Knight, Inception.
But then you get Dark Knight Rises, and that sort of fucks it up. And
Damn.
But then Interstellar and Dunkirk.
well, yeah,
Yeah, but in terms of wow, it is interesting. Anyway,
Robert Eggers is certainly
should
on a
move on.
generational run right now.
he's indeed.
Let's hit up the next film, Palme d'Or winner 2024, Sean Baker's Anora.
Yes.
What a film as well.
What an absolute banger, bro.
It stars, Mikey Madison,
Yeah.
Mickey Madison,
Mikey.
as Annie or Anora, who is a sex worker, prostitute, stripper,
Sex worker?
Yeah.
Sex
That's
worker.
probably an umbrella term.
a politically correct term, Nolan. Is
Sex worker?
No, I don't know.
I don't
adult-
prostitute is not politically correct.
That's a horrible thing to call someone.
Adult entertainer.
Yeah, adult entertainer.
That's
Adult
worse.
entertainer.
Don't, that is so much worse. Adult entertainer.
There's a sufficient amount of vagueness where you're like, oh, okay, she's just an
please.
adult entertainer. Right?
Anyway, so she is in.
Prostitute is like the Latin term. Like, prostitute.
Well, you want the like scientific
Yeah,
title.
I'm actually a prostitute. Prostitute.
Well, anyway, she works in New York as someone in that industry and is young. And the big thing that sort of propels the story forward is she speaks Russian.
Correct.
And one night she's working, and her boss, who is just a stupid sort of like bully of a clueless man, goes, "Hey, we've got a Russian client. You're on, like, showtime." And eventually what happens is she sort of builds this relationship with this young Russian son of like a billionaire sort of vibe who is an arms dealer.
Yeah.
And then the whole tension of a lot of the film is, okay, she's getting paid for this work, but there's like just a sort of liking and genuine affection that develops. And then we see it all unravel, and it's an incredible journey.
Yeah. So you have to mention that young guy's Vanya.
Yeah, Vanya.
Vanya, and then basically...
Well,
Ivan is his root. Yeah. But Vanya is, call me Vanya.
So the first sort of like half is this sort of Cinderella story between her and him, and it's all lovey-dovey, and they're basically just having endless sex, consuming
And
endless
parties.
drugs, alcohol,
Yes.
whatever. Typical young person, average, want that life kind
And it's
of
a
thing.
very upbeat, very fast-flowing,
Correct, yeah.
exciting and happy.
And then they get married, which is very...
Vegas.
In Vegas, very Cinderella story thing. And then his parents find out that they've been married, and they're like, that's not going to happen. And they basically send this guy, Toros, who was like Vanya's American overseer, works for his father kind of thing. Toros gets this little ragtag group of Russians together, and they turn
Armenian, aren't they?
Armenian, except Igor's Russian.
Yeah, Igor's Russian. Yeah.
They turn up at the crib and go in, and Vanya basically bails, ditches Anora,
Runs away.
runs away because he doesn't want to deal with this problem. And then Anora gets sort of captured in my opinion, the best scene in the movie, which is the sort of
The fight in the...
what's it called when you break into someone? Home invasion. Home invasion. The home invasion scene where they come in and Vanya bounces, and then they're trying to restrain Anora and get her to cooperate.
Fighting.
And then they have to go look for him, and that's kind of the second half of the movie. The whole thing is...
Well, yeah, it's split into two kind of halves.
Yeah, the whole movie, for the most part, is a comedy, but there's a there's a simmering dramatic tension and sadness to the whole thing that is sort of released in the final scene, which is also very amazing and incredible.
And so...
Which we'll get to.
Yeah, Nick and I were lucky enough to see this twice. We saw it at the Brisbane International Film Festival in
It was October.
October.
Yeah.
My bad. And then Isaac and Nick saw it again earlier.
My first time.
Oh yeah, well Isaac saw it, and then I watched it yesterday.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the genre predominantly being a comedy, and I was surprised.
Well, dramedy is what I said to Bowie.
And I was so impressed with how many people were in the cinema yesterday. About 20 for a Monday morning is great.
Yeah.
And the amount of laughter
Yeah.
that was in both our first cinema and this one is just...
Well, the crowd for the first was amazing.
Yeah.
Because Anora, every year it always is the case that there's one movie at BIFF that everyone wants to see, and it becomes like the thing. And last year, this being 2023 BIFF, was Poor Things. And it was so popular that like 3 sessions all sold out. They had to do another one. And Anora was the same thing. Anora had like 4 sessions. All of them sold out. We were in a fully sold out theater.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience because everyone was into it.
Well, I haven't heard laughter like that in even just a half full cinema, not even a quarter full cinema in so long, and it feels so alive. And it was great. It was awesome. Yeah. Because I was just in there by myself because I couldn't make your screening.
Yeah.
But then also in this, it's such a beautiful blend and I suppose progression of genre because it goes from this sort of comedy party-esque film,
like a rom-com into a dramedy.
But and then also like the hunt, the chase, the journey of that final half into just despair and like a sort of soul-sucking, heart-wrenching, like almost emptiness and empathy. And Sean Baker does that incredibly. And I don't think you've seen Red Rocket, right?
Yeah.
I have not, and I haven't seen the Florida Project.
I haven't seen anything from Sean
so
Baker.
neither have I.
I've seen quite a bit of his stuff.
Everything I've heard about Sean Baker is good.
Yeah.
And he is also young, comparatively, for a director. So great things coming out by younger directors at the moment.
Well, I think what Sean Baker shares with Robert Eggers, which I like and I mentioned when we were talking about Nosferatu, is Eggers unapologetically creates the time period with which he's depicting as authentically as he can. And Sean Baker is so good at representing the modern day and creating modern young, like he understands young people and how A, they talk, but B, just how they act and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of this film is phones.
Vapes.
That's what I said. That I like lean over to Nick. I'm like, I love that vapes are now a thing that like are just in
cinema.
movies. They're like just like cigarettes now, and everyone has their vape.
The thing is, right? Like none of us vape at all. I sit at work, and across the road there's an awesome cocktail bar or whiskey bar. Really, really cool spot. But one of their staff is outside every like 15 minutes for a vape break for like a minute.
Oh yeah, that's at my work break.
And like, I can't fathom it. But seeing in the strip club, people vaping inside, going outside, vaping outside, just constantly throughout the film and the parties, it's ridiculous, but it's true.
Yeah.
So the ability to create that modern time, and
it just feels like you're actually like, oh yeah, shit, I'm actually at the clubs. People definitely do this.
And one of our friends, E.C. Lewin, guest of the podcast, said it feels like one of the first truly Gen Z films.
Yeah.
Serious Gen Z films.
Yeah.
And I fucking agree. It's not like one of those stupid Netflix rom-coms from like 2020 that has, I don't know, Addison Rae in it or something. This is a serious film, a seriously good film.
Yeah.
For our generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also appeals to the older.
Yeah.
Because in my cinema there were couples, elderly couples, having the time of their lives.
Well, it is such a adult movie in content.
Oh, there's no childish themes.
In the way that it's written and sort of the themes and a hit. That's one of my. It reminded me a lot of what Phoebe Waller-Bridge said about screenwriting, because she wrote Fleabag, which is
the TV show,
which is great. And I actually read the script. I bought the script book and read it like that before I even watched the show.
Yeah,
and she basically said one of the best ways to write a compelling story is to disarm the audience with comedy and then punch them in the gut with drama. Which I think is just so apt. And that's exactly what Anora is to the T. That's how it's done. But when you watch Fleabag, although to be fair, most of sort of those gut punches come in the last episode of each series. She kind of does that throughout each episode a little bit. But this one in Anora for me basically just built up to one big punch at the end, which is that last scene, which is very, very famous. Although to be fair,
don't you think
on the plane is one as well.
Or even when she goes like to meet his parents, and she genuinely still thinks that like
there's hope,
there's a relationship here, and she gets up and she's like, my name is blah 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 blah, and she's like, shut the fuck up.
And you're Russian shit.
Yeah, and then even before they get on the plane, and Ivan's like, are you stupid?
Yeah, what do you think's going to happen?
She's genuinely like,
yeah,
wait, what?
But it is a gut punch, but there's still an air of comedy because like Igor's in the background trying not to laugh.
Yeah,
at some of these moments.
Well, yeah, and then you've got the massive rich dad when in the courtroom or like the little office pissing himself because Annie or Anora has called out his son and sort of given, at least in my interpretation, given him the serve that I think his father's always tried to give and never been heard. And I still don't think Vanny listens.
It was the same thing on the plane when his mom is like given the classic mum rant type thing. And then Anora starts going, you're a fucking... And the mom's like, ah?
Yeah.
You see?
And then,
like, that's funny, but it's...
and then also when the two Armenians try to interject and like thank the parents, there's just so much to love about this film in terms of... Yeah, its ability to insert comedy into serious themes.
It also, talking about the Armenians, reminded me... Another thing that makes it so much Gen Z is when... Toros has that rant at those people for not like talking to him on the coffee shop. No, in real life.
On the phone, yes.
He's like, none of you want to work anymore.
Yes.
Which is that's the big critique of Gen Z. Nobody wants to work.
And I think the biggest misconception.
But I think that's something this movie kind of deals with because obviously Ivan doesn't want to work, but it sort of portrays why he doesn't want to work.
Yeah.
It's the way he was brought up.
Exactly. And it's that sort of pressure.
Whereas Anora, I don't think is
her whole life's a hustle.
Yeah, whereas Anora, I think is someone isn't like, oh, she wants to work clearly, like she wants to do something.
But she wants to make a life for herself.
These people all want to,
better themselves
and create a stable life. So it's not that Gen Z doesn't want to work; it's that certain Gen Z people have certain situations, but
also I think
blah blah blah.
One thing I think that comes up, I don't think necessarily in the film, but this whole idea of Gen Z doesn't want to work, is it's like we are more in tune with making sure, like regulating and being aware of our emotions and not being consumed by the work life and the importance of like the work-life balance and things like that, which is where older generations go, you guys are pussies. You know, we would just kind of go to work and get on with it. Why are you crying about the fact that you've got to work a 50-hour week or something like that? That's, I think, the difference.
Well, I feel like with that work-life balance, it was something where in previous generations it was only the ultra-rich had it, or the rich that had that opportunity. And then millennials sort of said, hey, this isn't right. And then we're the ones that start to reap the benefit or have that sort of, you know, taught, and particularly...
But we have more rights today.
Yeah, and particularly a lot with, I feel like, how mothers raise us, or at least me. My dad is what I think is an emotionally in tune man. Mm-hmm. But my mum, I always remember when I was younger, was the one teaching me how to express my emotions and saying it's okay and all these things. And I think that's something that was lost in previous generations, perhaps because the man still had significant control over what mothers were able to do in that sort of raising of children.
It's interesting that Ivan has no emotional development. And I wonder, what is the idea, just that because he's spoiled?
Well, I think it's spoiled, but what you sort of begin to realize is that when these people are at that level of wealth, where they can basically palm off any responsibility, like they could hire a nanny and they can hire this person.
And nobody's even a person to them anymore.
Exactly. Well, and it becomes like, you know, they think giving them money is the same thing as giving them emotional support, you know.
Well, yeah, so the point you're making is that, you know, he probably wasn't really heavily raised by his family.
No, like he would be emotionally stunted because they're off jet setting,
working or partying,
doing whatever.
And, you know, I don't think, like, I've heard from personal experience of family members and stuff, I don't think you can ever not account for not being raised by parents or parental figures. I think that's a crucial part. And you do a lot of this sort of learning, I believe, of like development of just the brain and those things, right? And how important nature, nurture, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, just quite simply not having a nourished environment
while
you're developing.
There you go. And how that can affect someone.
Cooked.
Yeah, exactly. And when we see it in schools, we saw it in schools and university still, you go, holy shit, this guy, you know, there's something gone wrong here.
Yeah.
And so I think that is what Vanya is.
But it's the balance. You can't have too little and you can't have too much. You've got to be somewhere in the middle.
Well, I think that's something that's very interesting about raising humans compared to like raising a dog. With a dog, you can just, you know, give it as much love as you want, blah, blah, blah. But with humans, because humans have beliefs, you have to be very careful how you raise someone, because you need to make sure that they are able to believe things that help them but like behave properly in society.
Well, there's love to an extent, and then there's the coddling and overbearing and helicopter parent thing.
The beliefs that they form are like, I am important as hell and everyone should just bow down.
And then there's then I'll never do anything for myself, and then there's the lack of independence, and then the inability to act in the real world or hold down a job.
It's a very hard thing to raise.
Yeah, and it's stressful. We've all noticed and seen that firsthand. And so that's what Vanya suffers from, and then also being an entitled little prick because of the way he is raised. I think at the end of the day.
And I think this is the key thing the film explores is sort of class identity. Anora and Igor obviously are much closer in class identity and therefore have more in common, and they're both sort of living the same kind of life, whereas Anora kind of tries to step into Ivan's sort of class, and she just can't because she doesn't have the same experience or resources.
Well, the thing is, Annie or Anora as the stripper is a persona. Yeah. It is put on. It is that sort of high roller, high life that is just for that 8 hours she works or the 4 hours she works. What I think I noticed the most on the rewatch is the silence that comes in and out of the film. So, you know, it's all party, 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 and then there's no sound. And Sean Baker does it on purpose to create the somber mood or draw you into the fact that you've just seen all this, and then the tension's released. And it's just, there's like the empty feeling. But, you know, she finishes that shift, the first shift, and then she's on a train, headphones, cuddled up in a hoodie, silence. That's the life she's living, not the high life she steps into, as you said. And I've lost track of where... Yeah, it's a persona. The real Anora is working class.
I think a huge factor, which actually links into what, not just what you said, but the thing before is... And I was talking to Isaac about this, is the idea of transactional relationships. That's what it is. And like Vanya, his whole life is predicated on everything is a transactional relationship. Like there's no sense of love there, because his parents, instead of saying, I love you because you bring me joy, it's like, well, I just gave you $5 million to go and clearly I love you. I gave you $5 million, you know? And so he thinks all monetarily, and that equates to an emotional, you know, relationship and support. And Anora also comes from a transactional background, but in a different way than Vanya's.
I think the other thing that's interesting to note is that both her and Igor, I think, are comparable insofar as they both are selling their body. And I think that's, you know, quite intentional. And I think that's sort of why you're supposed to feel their relationship at the end is more powerful. Plus, obviously, the fact that Anora, as you said, thinks that equates emotional responses with like a transaction. So when Igor just does something nice and is like, bro, I got this ring, like, just take it. She's like, oh, how do I thank him? I need to give him what he wants from me, because all I'm good for is...
and that's that huge gut punch at the end that you talk about.
He tries to kiss her and she's like, hell no, bro, I'm giving you like... And he realizes, oh, fuck. And so she breaks down. Because she realizes too, like, how
twisted she's been through this, like, almost training.
Do you think that in that moment she realizes that his affection is genuine? Or do you think that she's sort of just realizing that she's so
I think she's realizing
fucked?
Heaps of shit. I think it's
very
like
complex.
her realizing, oh, he didn't just want, like...
My body.
He wants to actually have...
He cares about me.
And I think especially because he stops. Like, once he realizes that she doesn't want to engage.
But she's
in
pulling
that
back, and so he doesn't try and force her to come down.
Well, there's like that second of figuring out what's going on, and then as soon as he realizes, he stops.
And his immediate sort of response isn't like...
It is caring.
It's like, oh my God, I feel like terrible.
But then she also... I think there's a lot of that sort of reflection of her job.
She's like...
And how she's been sort of... I think the right word is trained or conditioned.
Or how she's sort of...
Conditioned.
How her job has bled into her actual emotional life.
And how that affects that. And I think that would be the biggest part of that realization, I think, is like, holy shit, like, fuck.
And I wonder if there's a certain fear of intimacy that she has.
Well, and then that would be the case as well. But then also... I feel like that breakdown is the first real time she gets to sit on what the fuck the last 2 weeks have just been as well.
Yeah.
You know, because everything's been go, go, go. It was a party, and then the search. And then she's finally free of Vanya and his family and just Igor in a car, and she's at her home and she's finally back, and then it's just all out at one big time. And that is, again, another very Gen Z thing, is you still have people that are... So we talk about being in tune with our emotions, but you still have people that bottle it all up until there's that breaking point. And the only other really sad emotion you see, well, there's no real sad emotion you see from Anora. It's more so just anger.
Right.
That is the first time, well, the biggest time you see actual just emptiness and sadness.
But I mean, I just love it's look at materialism as well, and that final scene being in that, like, they're in the car. And she goes,
my granddad's car.
Yeah, it's my grandma's car. And she's like, this car sucks. Oh, it's so you.
She said, it's so you.
It's so you. And he goes, it's my grandmother's. And they're sitting there and it's snowing and it's cold.
And that's actually a great line, because it's so you. And the fact that it's his grandma's car. It sort of connects him to how he's a caring person,
Yeah.
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and also just hardworking and,
Yeah,
never been given anything on a plate. That's a family sort of heirloom sort of thing for a working class person is getting a hand-me-down car.
Yeah.
And I wish I had my grandfather's car because this is his granddad's, and I wish.
But what it does, though, for me at least, is there was more personality and emotion before they actually she broke down, and it was still like a seemingly normal scene. There's still more emotion and character and like sympathy in that setting than there is in the big mansion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
Like you're sitting there and
absolutely.
it's more tangible and empathetic.
Well, mansions, and we've all talked about this, feel empty.
Yeah.
They feel devoid of life.
Yeah.
Unless you have people with incredible sort of,
Decor.
Incredible decor and the ability to create warmth in homes, which is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
They feel, void of life.
Especially the modern sort of like tile ones.
Yeah, white. If you can create warmth, it's a different story. But a car like that's looked like from the 70s or 80s has that warm hue to the colors of the interior and a familiar sort of feel to them. That's when that warmth and the ability to feel real, and that connection comes from as well. But you get the night before when they're both together in the mansion because Tauros is like, you can stay one more night and then we're giving you this money, blah, 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 blah. And you sort of see them trying to work each other out because Igor the whole time has been trying to work Annie out or Anora. Yeah. She hasn't paid any attention to him except like, you're a fucking freak, you tie me up, blah, blah, blah. But the entire time, because I wanted to pay more attention to Igor's relationship with her, because after the first time I saw it, and he's just the most caring person. There's never any animosity or anything. And that night before, it's the happy birthday to me, and then Anora sort of is Touche, still holding back, and then there's a couple slight laughs that are cracked, and then she has that massive setup with the insult.
Yeah.
Which is her sort of, I think, in my opinion, symbolizing that she's okay with him or reflecting that she's okay with him. Yeah. And it's the, why wouldn't you would have raped me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and he's like, what? Why?
And then she sets it up with, you're a blah, 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 which are naughty words.
Yeah.
I think so.
But I thought that was brilliant as well.
I want to get into one quick question, which is that there's a criticism that I read about the movie, which I don't agree with at all, which is that Anora is the least characterized in the sense of that she's the least developed and her motivations and her wants are the least, shown, developed, which I just think is totally wrong. Because I find the whole movie and the whole story is basically... It is an examination of her life. And it's all you don't need it to be spoken.
Yeah, it's not explicit.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of tangled up in different ways.
Yeah.
And also, I think the fact that it's kind of obscure is on purpose because Anora is trying to
figure out herself and
what she actually desires and so on. And she doesn't really know as well as what you just said. Hence the whole issue at the end,
Yeah.
Well,
quickly to go back to, how you were saying like inside the car is like warm. I think another interesting thing is the night before when they're in the mansion is also warm.
Well, it's darkly
and
lit,
which it hasn't been
there's no...
the rest of the movie. Yeah. And I think
and it's
the other
quiet
thing interesting
as well
is when they're in the car, it's obviously cold outside. So I think that's clearly a choice made. But yeah, it's interesting.
But with the Anora thing, like I think she is awfully well developed. And like, for instance, the first time her and Vanya meet outside of her even in the strip club kind of thing, you can tell there's like more, like it's certainly a transactional relationship still, but you can see that sort of glimmer in her eye and sort of genuine sort of attraction that goes beyond the money. It's just like, oh, this is a kind of cute guy, he's a funny guy.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And that's that sort of other tension aside from the partying and the comedy of that first half is the watching someone that met someone else for money start to develop a genuine sort of relationship and love. And that's when like some of the littler gut punches hit hard is when you realize it was completely one.
Yeah. For me, with people
way.
who give that criticism, because her goals perhaps are not explicitly stated as compared to most other people. Like, it's pretty obvious with everyone else. Hers are a bit more understated. But if you watch the final scene and you're at all moved by it, clearly the only reason you would be moved by that scene is if you clearly understood her character and that journey and why she would be crying at that point. You know, if there was no development to her and you didn't understand her as a character, then that ending would be like, oh, she's crying. Okay. Yeah. Instead of going, holy fuck.
Well, yeah, I think I just started reading that review you're talking about. It's got 14,000 likes.
Yeah.
From like a former sex worker in New York City.
Yeah.
I'm not going to read all that because it's a million.
I mean, it's an interesting review. Because, I mean, especially coming from someone who lived that life. I mean, she would be more able to relate to the emotions of it than I am.
Yes.
But, and she can have her opinion. Mm-hmm. But, I don't know. I just don't get that criticism. I think it's
Does she say more toward, like...
She does, but we're just...
It's not worth it.
No, it's not worth it because it's going to take ages. It's a long review.
True.
But, I don't know. I just think... Because of how well written it is, in the sense that nothing feels forced and nothing almost feels like script-like, in the sense that we're now at the point in the movie where we have to do X, you know, by convention. Mm-hmm. It's not like we're following some sort of formula or anything. They're just showing you a story in real time, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's easier for us because it's something we could almost insert ourselves into tomorrow, in terms of the characters being from our generation as well.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I know that guy that works at this, you know, shop that just vapes the whole time.
But like an equivalent type story could easily happen to any of us in just the sense of, oh, Bowie's lost, we need to find him.
Mm-hmm. In that part
and
of
then
it.
you end up just going to different places where people are working going, sup, where you go. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure if I have the right words to say what I'm thinking about this next part I want to say, but one of my favorite parts of this film is how Sean Baker and his cinematographer are able to film the human body so beautifully without it being intimate, I feel.
Do you mean gratuitous or like exploitative?
Well, it's like...
Or do you mean like to be devoid of emotion?
Devoid of emotion.
Right.
Like there is like... the only emotion is like...
lust.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of that first half of the film where it's her and Vanya and either she's naked or he's naked. And one of my favorite scenes, don't get me wrong, is when he does the backflip onto the bed. Yeah. Like, that's fucking hilarious. Yeah. But in the strip club, there is no, like, intimacy or real sort of, I guess, feeling towards what you're seeing. It's just like, okay, that looks nice. Move on.
Yeah.
Whereas at the end, when there is the scene between her and Igor, there's this huge... And it's a combination of feelings of absolute sadness and, like, heartbreak, but also, like, there's, like, the genuine intimacy and...
Well, there's other reasons for why the you don't get that earlier. In every other scene, like, sexual...
Well, there's music.
There's music. There's the sound design's
bright
completely
lighting.
different. But it's also just the positioning of their bodies.
Uh-huh.
I might be wrong on this, but I'm quite certain that she's almost always facing the other way.
Okay.
Like, for example, even when they're doing the lap dances, like they're doing it facing the other way.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel intimate. And that's part of actually why that last sex scene is so difficult for her, because he's trying to look her in the eyes. Mm-hmm. And she's like, stop.
Well, I think it's completely intentional.
Yeah,
and I think it's done incredibly well, though.
Yeah,
what I'm trying to convey. I think it's done perfectly.
But it's so minimalist, and it's not like they take all their clothes off and whatever. It's like the most tame of all their intimacy scenes.
The one that feels the most intimate is the one that's the least
sexual,
explicitly sexual.
Yeah, and that's I think what I was trying to get into is, you know, there's lots of tits in your face, lots of ass in your face, blah blah blah, but the one where the clothes are still on is the one that feels the most intimate.
Yeah,
and I think that's a beautiful thing to be able to convey in a 2.5 hour film.
Part of that is also how, like, Ivan is just going like speed mode like a rabbit, you know.
Yeah,
true.
It's just totally like, she's an object of my desire. She has none of her own interests, and she shouldn't. Like, that's basically how he views it.
And she says, you know, like, it'd be a lot better. Oh, I can't do that.
Yeah, it'd be a lot better
if you just went slow. Like, let me do it.
Yeah,
and then it is a lot better.
To be fair,
but
again, for him, that's when he says "I love you" to her. After that, that doesn't actually mean I love you.
I think he's equating it to the pleasure he felt.
That just means, oh my god, that feels amazing.
Yeah.
You are an amazing. It's basically him just viewing her as his little toy.
Yeah.
Which he does view her as.
And he has that feeling of he can treat her wherever he wants because he's paying her $50,000 for 7 days.
Exactly.
Sort of thing.
The biggest thing that I have to say in terms of making a point is just, again, to give flowers to someone, that's Mikey Madison. I mean, unbelievable performance as Anora. I think probably my favorite performance of the year in terms of, from what I can recall. I mean, when you see her in interviews, she could not be more different than Nora. And she has like a flawless Brooklyn accent. She learnt Russian. She learnt how to pole dance. She's, again, throws herself into it 100% and trusts with Sean Baker in terms of doing nudity and things like that. And just being emotional. I don't know if it was a podcast or something, but she had an interview where she talked about filming that last scene and how to get into that space of such emotional wreckage. She and Sean Baker was like sitting in the back seat of the car, and Igor, I forget the actor's name,
Yura,
whatever, and they were all there, and they listened to a voice message from her dad, from Mikey's dad, which was, I don't know what he said in it, but like that he was proud of her, he loved her, or whatever it is that he said. And they all sat there and listened to that. And she was so willing to do that and to give them that just so they could get to this point. I just thought she was so awesome and fantastic and just completely, and it's an impressive thing because, don't get me wrong, like Colin Farrell's Penguin, amazing. One of the best TV performances of the year for sure. But he was at least able to have a bit of a mask and to be hidden by something else to give him more character. Like that's just Mikey Madison. And yet she's not there. She's playing this character so well. And yeah, I think it's like a career making thing for her.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, all the actors in it were fantastic. I loved Taurus. I loved Igor. Vanya is a good actor, but she's just like unbelievable.
I think the worst acting in the film is the mother.
Yeah, her job is just to be like
a bitch.
Yeah,
and a ruthless one.
Yeah,
but she's still decent. And she had good comedic timing.
I actually think probably the only reason she comes across as a little bit worse is just she has a bad accent. So it's like
it's like a caricature.
Tauros's first henchman, Garnick is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, because when he threw up in the car.
Is that the dude who's like an actual comedian?
I don't know.
He's the guy who gets his nose broke.
Yeah, but he gets his nose broke. That bitch broke my nose. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. And then
he threw up in the car.
Like he does the drugs.
Like the biggest comedian in Armenia or something.
Oh, wow. But like
something like that.
But like he is hilarious and like half the movie's drugged. And he throws up in the car, but he's still drugged and he's still tired and he gets the parking ticket and all these things. And everyone, even the minor roles, get given such a purpose.
Oh, that's another.
And
the courtroom scene's so funny. But so good.
That's also the other thing that we haven't even like mentioned about this whole movie is the part where like Ivan gets in trouble. That's over 24 hours, 48 hours. It's about 40 hours. Yeah, and even when he gets found, I guess as well. The whole thing is about 48 hours, and the toll it takes on every character that isn't Ivan and et cetera, is insane. Like, for example, just Garnick's character, he clearly has like relapsed on drugs or something. Like he's like gone from for example, it's actually really subtle, but at the party scene, when Ivan's like, where are those Armenians at when he's doing coke? There's also a scene, and then when like Taurus gets angry at the people for getting on the couch, you'll notice that when they're doing like the New Year's countdown, Garnick's drinking water. He's like sober. Obviously, he's probably on the job, I guess, but like it's kind of like a very clear like this guy doesn't really do much. But then after that whole thing, But anyway, the whole point I'm making here is just the toll it takes on each of the characters. This is like something that has kind of significantly impact their life.
Well, yeah, it shows how selfishness can impact not just you, but other people.
But then, like,
as
the rich people are just chilling,
Yeah.
They go back to Russia, he has to do some job.
But then, Igor misses his birthday.
Yeah.
Taurus had to ruin someone's baptism.
Taurus, I mean, dude, yeah.
And, risked his job.
Destroyed his car.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally, so much.
Yeah.
But they're just seen as sort of, like, property in a way. They're just sort of like...
Even the lawyer's reputation is potentially damaged from, it shows, the impact of selfishness on
But I think
other people.
I think even it's just demonstrating the divide between class.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that amount of money, these people to you are
Pawns.
just property.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Anything more to say?
Excellent film. I was going to say something else about the last scene, but I can't remember.
There's a lot to say about the last scene. So
I just can't put my...
There was a whole... Isaac and I had a really lengthy discussion about kind of what I thought all of it meant, which I really can't be bothered to regurgitate now because it's really long.
Mm-hmm.
But I found an essay that really, really did a good job of relating what I believe that the film is talking about. So what I might do is we might put it in the bio of the YouTube video. So if you want to read that, the ending analysis, this essay, which is great, definitely do that because, the last scene's just so good and so evocative of so many things. But yeah.
Ratings?
I'm happy to...
Oh.
No, you can stop it.
I'm going to give it a 9.
I'm actually changing my rating. 10.
You give it a 10?
Yes, sir.
See, I was thinking the same thing because, and I should have said that. I don't know why the fuck I didn't say that. Did you thought it got better the second watch?
Yeah.
Because that was the first thing I said to Isaac. That was so much better the second time.
You and I both gave it a 9 after Biff.
That's right.
I think it is
how much of it, I know we're now having a side tangent, but I just want to know. So how much of it did you recall basically all of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty
It
much.
was still pretty fresh.
But I just focused on different things. The main things I focused on were Igor's sort of character development more so.
Yeah.
And also what I wanted to look at was the genre evolution and blend.
Yeah.
Because there were two things I thought were the most unsuspecting parts of the film is, okay, a minor character ends up being one of the most important as the film progresses, and then also the genre and how it blends so well. And that's what I looked at, and I think this film deserves a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And it got better with the conversation we had as well just now.
Definitely. Well, you got to read that essay.
I will.
Anyway, we'll do that. I honestly think the same. I think I'll say a 10 as well.
Excellent.
I mean, when I was confidently on a 9 the first time, I knew it was a 9 the first time. And when I've walked out going, that is significantly better, like I feel like I now have a really good understanding of it. But it was still funny. That's the other thing.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
As a comedy, you don't want to watch the comedy, and the next time you watch it, it's fucking shit. That's why like Edgar Wright movies are the best, because I've watched Hot Fuzz like 10 times and it's still funny. But yeah, I think it's a 10.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Fair enough. All right then.
Right, so I had a pick.
You
I'll
did.
get into this.
Did indeed have a pick.
So my pick last month was Harold and Maude. It was directed by Hal Ashby. He's some guy. Made 1971. It stars Ruth Gordon as Maude, Bud Cort as Harold, and an important adage here because it's such a huge part of the film. Music by Cat Stevens.
Hell yeah.
Which I'm sure will be a big part of our discussion because it is actually such a prominent aspect of the movie. Basically, it's about this guy Harold who he's been interesting. Definitely an odd mark of a guy. Is just obsessed with death. You basically realize in the movie that at a point, I forget precisely what had happened, but it was a boarding school, and there was a fire.
He was in the chemistry
lab, and there was a fire,
So
and the police or whoever it was turned up at his mum's house and were like, "We think your son's dead," but he was actually upstairs. Like he had come home during the night, like bailed on boarding school, come home, and saw his mother's reaction to finding out that he was dead, but he was actually alive. And it just it clearly sent him into some sort of depression because all he basically did, very comedically, was fake killing himself.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of the movie is just him concocting these really insane fake suicide attempts. And basically that's what he does. He spends his time doing that or watching buildings get wrecking balled or going to funerals. So he's a really chipper guy. And basically he meets this woman, Maude, who, again, you learn a lot about her, which was really interesting. She's this 79-year-old woman who, again, is enjoying some things about, like, is clearly thinking about death because they meet because she also goes to these random funerals that have no relation to her.
And she's getting on.
She's getting on.
She is 79.
But she also is a very free spirit and is actually more, she loves life.
Yes. Breath of fresh air.
This is what you think. She just loves living, does whatever she wants, doesn't give a crap about the law or anything else, just sort of...
Steals cars,
like a lot of cars.
trees.
And and just sort of is in love with life. And it creates a real impact on Harold. And basically it's about their relationship that ultimately grows into, like a love relationship.
Which is strange.
It's strange, but the whole movie is fucking
65-year age gap, hell yeah. Or 60-year age gap.
Well, he's...
He'd have to be at least... Or do you know his age?
I think
he'd
he'd
have
be
to be at
18
least
or
18.
19. Yeah.
Has to be at least.
Can you just look that
He
up?
looks so incredibly young.
Yeah, I thought he was 14 when the movie started. So I'm not really sure.
It says he's about 20.
About
Okay.
20 is nice.
All right,
And the actor was 23.
cool.
Oh, it's based on a novel.
Yeah.
All right, disregard that. We'll talk about that later.
Interesting.
So that's the movie. That's what it was about. Go. What do we think?
Well, my first thing is awfully strange.
It is a weird
Just
movie.
really weird. Very funny at times. Funny in
Thought it was
way.
very funny.
Yeah, like Maude is hilarious in just like an odd, quirky kind of way.
Yeah.
Harold is disturbing looking,
Yeah.
unsettling, and
Pale.
and very funny when he tries to kill himself, which generally is not a funny thing.
No.
But you know, his mum sets him up on these computer dates, and as soon as they, rock up, he pretends to kill himself in front of them just to scare them off because he has no interest.
Yeah.
Because he at that point had met Maude. So it's funny and it's strange and it's quirky, and it's short. But I'm not the greatest fan. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's anything brilliant per se.
Yeah. I definitely would be interested in seeing it again because I think there's a lot of interesting subtext and subtleties to the movie. I really quite liked it, and the more that I thought about it, the more I liked it. I think it's actually really quite well written. The comedy is very, very black and impressive given when it was made and things like that. It's quite and just the whole movie is very ballsy. Like it's basically about huge age gap, romance, which does lead to sex and making fun of suicide essentially.
And what police?
The police, yeah. What it does though, I think really well is two things. I think it does a really good job. Similarly, comedy and then to some people with comedy hit them with drama is when you kind of realize the history of both Harold and Maude and why they are the way they are is very interesting and emotional, I think. I mean, I was never moved by it. Like I didn't tear up or anything like that in the movie. Perhaps I would if I saw it again and knew kind of what was coming and could look out for different things. But I don't know.
I mean, the 1 second shot of her arm
Is the most telling shot of the film.
her entire, and because I think
that's why
it
it's,
also is
very
why
impressive.
Harold's response at the end makes a lot of sense because of course, Maude has gone through extreme suffering and she still has come out with an absolute
Love
for life.
Yeah.
And he has had no suffering really. He's from an aristocratic family.
He live in like a castle kind of vibe.
And so when he does have that one sort of moment of suffering, losing Maude, that's I think why he at the end is so willing to do the same thing she should have did and be inspired by her and have a love for life at the end doing his little skippy thing. The one question I have is, does Maude just kill herself because she's like, I'm getting old and my vitality is leaving me?
Well, there's like a scene early on where she goes, 75's too young, but 85's too old.
Yeah.
And so 80s are immediately in the middle. So I think she had a fully planned
She also
thing.
does tease way early in the movie that she's going to die on her birthday. She says something like, I can't remember the exact
She
line.
says not long to go. She says stuff like that.
Oh, she says my birthday's on Saturday, and then she says something to the effect of like, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And he doesn't pick up on it, and I was like, the heck? And then obviously when on it is her birthday, and she's like, oh yeah, I've taken the pills, bro.
Yeah. But I think it's, she goes 75, 80's immediately in the middle. She turns 80 dead.
See,
there you go.
I thought about it more though and was thinking, again, that the tattoo thing is so telling. I think we should just elaborate on that, which is that she has a number tattoo on her arm, which essentially she was a Holocaust survivor. That's what that is.
Because, she's born in Austria.
Yeah. And for me, and this is going to relate to, I have a big point to make, but it will relate, which is that I believe that her whole wanting to die at 80 is kind of like wanting to have her death on her own terms when she lived so much of her early life with the fear of death and in her life completely in the hands of other people. And beyond that, not only having death on her own terms, but just living life to its fullest and on her own terms as well, not allowing anything to constrain her.
Yeah,
and that's due to her experiences. And while I was on holiday in Japan, I read this book called The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jaku. It was his autobiography, and it was absolutely amazing. And you guys have to read it. It's a really short book. But he was a Holocaust survivor, and he had an incredible, like most of the book is about him actually being in Auschwitz and different camps and that. But he got out and managed to, I think he got to Brussels and then was like, I'm never stepping foot on German soil again. And he was filled with resentment because he got back to Brussels, and this is post-World War, and everyone's just trying to get by, including non-Jewish Germans who have fled Germany because of the war, because everything was in shambles. Yeah. And he had so much resentment, and he was so, I'm just looking after myself and because he met up with his sister and his mate who survived. He was so antagonistic towards everybody else. And he realized that thinking is exactly the type of thinking that led to the Nazi Party and all the soldiers being complicit in Hitler's crimes. And so he got on a ship, went to Australia, and lived in Sydney for the rest of his life. He lived to 102. And it was his mission to never let sort of those like evil and darkness and resentment corrupt his soul, and to live as good of a life as he could live. And that's literally what this story of Maude is. I found it so amazing that I had just been so moved by that book, and then this is essentially what her character is. And that's what I think the film is doing, is the film is all about death, but it's actually trying to say to the audience how important life is, whilst making death, A, the subject, and B, funny as hell. Yeah. And almost appealing. Like, we're looking forward to the next fake suicide, and we're looking forward to different things. But actually, by the end, you go, wow, like life really is worth living. Now, I'm not saying we have to live like Maude.
No.
Because it's probably not a good idea to steal a police motorbike.
Yeah, because realistically, you're not going to have the freedom afterwards that she has.
Correct.
But yes. Yeah, going back to the Maude death thing, I think A, is it having it on her terms, but B, it's having it before she loses what she's loved and had for so long now.
Like before she
becomes
freedom in her bed or something.
I was saying to Isaac and you last night, I don't know whether you were listening, but my dad says as soon as he starts to lose his bodily functions and ability, sort of what's the point? Yeah, I think that's part of Maude's decision as well, is I'd hate to be confined, restrained.
Well, because you're not living at that point.
Exactly. And the quality of life disappears.
I think my mum said the similar thing, where she doesn't want to get to the point where she becomes a burden.
Burdensome, yep.
Because at a point, it happens, not necessarily within my family, it hasn't really happened, but people get to that stage where, like, if you develop Alzheimer's or whatever it is, and you become just bedridden, and you need someone 24/7 to look after you, and you're not even a capable human being. You can no longer drive. You can't do your own banking.
You can't think.
You can't think. Yeah. You can't do anything. You can't turn on the frickin' TV. I think that's
and then the biggest thing then is the impact it has on other people.
The impact it has on other people.
Yes. And I'm completely in that boat right now with two of my grandparents, is both dementia, both essentially bedridden now, and both stressing the hell out of my dad and upsetting him. And the biggest impact it's had on me is the image and the feeling and the view you had of them. You begin to forget when they were fine, because you've spent so long and so many recent memories of them not being fine. And so, that thing I think is, in that sense, from Maude, very empathetic, and sort of caring of Harold is, I've met this guy, he's awesome, you know, I think he admires me. I don't want him to see me in this way or slowly become this way, which is a beautiful thing. It's a massive and serious thing to do as well. But
what do you think, Bowie?
Well, I was just sort of, there was a small little connection that I saw while we were watching it, and I don't know much about this anyway, but it's something I maybe noticed, was a connection to a psychoanalyst from way back in the day called Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, and his whole deal was like basically man's search for meaning and so on. And the reason I think
that Uncle Victor.
Sorry?
Uncle Victor?
I don't know what that's referencing.
Uncle Victor is the uncle in the film.
Oh, maybe.
Named after.
Oh, right. No, it wouldn't be that. But the reason I think that maybe there's a connection is obviously there's already a psychoanalyst in there, and it's like the Freud thing, and he's clearly supposed to be an idiot. And I'm pretty sure Viktor Frankl was quite critical of that form of psychoanalyst. Anyway. And Viktor Frankl has a story of when he was in whatever concentration camp or whatever, and they had just done a hard day's work, and they were all lying down in their like hut thing, whatever they were in, and one of the other prisoners said, "Guys, you have to come out here and see this thing." And they went out, and there's basically a beautiful sunset and blah blah blah, and one of the prisoners goes, "Oh, look how beautiful the world can be." And I think that's like when Maude has when we have the realization that she was a Holocaust survivor, they're basically doing the same thing. She's admiring how beautiful the world could be. So I don't know if there's more. I think what you're reading there is also. I was reading that just before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if there's more to it or if it's just one tiny coincidence. But even still, I think it's interesting because Maude's whole deal is her going through extreme suffering and then trying to figure out, why do I want to keep living? And for her, it's freedom. It's the fact that life is so beautiful, and hence her whole thing of like getting the locker room stories, you know?
Well, life's a gift.
Yeah.
And then also, I think in that scene, the dialogue between Harold and Maude, perhaps, Maude sort of alludes to the fact that, you know, even things that you perceive as being ugly or unwanted and things to discard are also beautiful. She makes the joke about the seagulls.
Yeah.
You know, and how it's like one of the most beautiful things she'd ever seen. And then years later, I found out it was seagulls. She chuckles.
Yeah.
And, you know, it still keeps like a fond thing in her heart for that moment, despite realizing it wasn't perhaps what she thought it might have been. So there's certainly a lot of merit to this film. Absolutely. And the more you talk about it,
And music by Cat Stevens, has to be said.
excellent.
Absolute banger soundtrack. Composed so many fucking great hits for this.
Yeah.
Really loved the music. It just added like another layer because his music is so emotional, I find. And it just brought out, it just made
It brings the emotion out in the film.
so much more resonance in scenes where perhaps it may not have hit as well.
And I think it frames scenes in a very specific way that without that music introduced, because the music almost always introduces scenes, I think.
Yeah.
Without it like that, I think the scenes kind of wouldn't work.
Yeah.
There's something about the way that Cat Stevens, the way that he sounds, it just kind of like...
Well, I think his voice sounds like someone that's been through stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
There's like a slight anguish to his singing.
It's very unfiltered, isn't it? It's just like a guitar and him. There's usually not a lot of instrumental.
And in some of his music, it sounds like he's straining, which I think, like there's that sort of anguish or like sort of...
Like he's almost crying while he's singing.
Yeah, like particularly in the song, and it's not in this one, but Father and Son.
Yeah.
You know, that is a story that is filled with, you know, in part sadness and things, and there's a strain and sort of emotion in his voice. But like we were joking last night, Harold and Maude were composing a song, and it was silly, blah blah blah. And I was like, I wonder if Cat Stevens composed this too, or wrote this too. And then later on, there's like a massive bird's eye shot of, I can't remember whether they're walking or driving, but then it's Cat Stevens singing it, and it goes from like this average, silly, goofy sounding song, as you'd imagine it from Harold and Maude, into a beautiful song by Cat Stevens. It's like, fuck yeah.
And also, when you just said something about the shot, that reminded me of how great that shot is when they're in
The cemetery.
the cemetery and it pulls out
Yeah.
so far
Yeah.
and it reveals like the beautiful line of like
Yeah, but
Tombs.
they
and
are.
how small they are in this
Yeah.
giant.
But that's a perfect example of like essentially the thesis of the movie, which is that you can find beauty and happiness amongst
Death.
and
Yeah.
and the endless, seemingly insurmountable tragedy of the world. Like you zoom out, and it's just hundreds of thousands, probably, of graves.
There we go. War stones.
War graves. And they're standing there having a beautiful picnic, enjoying like this small little moment of life, surrounded by so much, all of those people who suffered and died.
I wonder as well what you guys think about whether or not it's committed to a cultural critique. Because, of course, this is made in the 70s.
Yeah, during Vietnam.
And it is
It was
obviously...
also the American, but it's the American new wave of cinema, which was where they were trying to push the boundary, and there was a lot of commentary in almost all movies.
Yeah, so do you think it's committing to specifically like that sort of critique of the traditional sort of American views, or do you think it's sort of using that as a way to express Maude's life?
I'm sure if you gave it more thought and really put effort into thinking about it, you might be able to come up with a better, what's the fucking term?
Reading or interpretation?
No. It's the one sentence that summarizes your paper.
Hypothesis.
Oh, right.
You could come up with a better hypothesis or a thesis, whatever. A better thesis. But initially, I would say there was so much skepticism and disenfranchisement in America at that time with what was going on with Vietnam, JFK, so much different crap that was going on.
Mixing up on that guy's wall.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff like that. That's probably apt, though, that he's there. I mean, you could think about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that guy would love Nixon, bro.
And we could talk about that military scene with his uncle, but perhaps just what they're trying to do is to say, hey guys, no matter how shit things are going right now, we're all gonna be okay, and you got to just try and find the light in amongst it, some darkness. I think it's as an initial analysis. I'm sure there's a lot deeper, and you could take it somewhere else.
Well,
the options you provide, I certainly think it's the latter.
What were the options that I provided?
Well, so it was committing to a cultural criticism, or using parts of the culture at the time to just create the story, and then the message from that of Maude's character.
I don't think they're criticizing the culture.
I think there's slight parts with the soldier and with the policeman, etc.
But even
like incompetencies of government, etc.
It's taking the piss out of the traditional psychoanalyst sort of like authoritarian. This is actually what you believe.
Yeah.
And then of course the mother.
Yeah, family.
I think it's parodying a sort of certain strain of American culture, but it's not like fuck America. You know?
Yeah.
No.
But I think when what you were saying earlier, like what you think the thesis is, like this idea of, we're all going to be okay when the world is still beautiful. I think I agree, except I think it's a little bit more active. Like they think you still have to make the world
you have to do it.
Embraces the beauty. You don't just sit there and go,
no,
it doesn't happen. But you have to find
to find the beauty.
It's not passive.
But even in a sense, you have to make it. I mean, of course, because Maude herself, A, is an artist, but B, she's creating a lot of things that for her that wouldn't just happen naturally. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, she poses naked in front of ice sculptors,
and I think that's why I think that in a sense it's still a cultural critique, because to make the world a beautiful place, you also have to make society function in such a way. But I don't think it's not like a thesis on how society should run. I think it's just,
Well, one thing that I found
sort
interesting,
of throwing ideas out.
A scene that I think actually has a lot of underlying subtext is the one in which Harold and Maude essentially try to get Harold out of military conscription, and it's when he's walking with his uncle, and there's multiple things that happen. First, he says, "You got to call me sir."
Yeah.
Then in the background, you see like a war vet or something collapse.
Yeah.
And no one gives a shit.
While he's talking about how well they treat.
Yeah, just flops down. And then third, and I'd say most importantly, is actually when he's saying to Harold all these great things that you're going to learn in military academy, and Harold embraces it, like sarcastically embraces it, and starts saying all these different things that he could learn to do, which are things that you would learn to do, like slit
Basically
throats,
just
kill
ways
people.
of killing people.
Yeah, ways of killing people, and just this carnage and chaos that you could
Collecting souvenirs.
ensue. Yeah, that.
Pulls out
And
the hair.
and he, as the military guy, is taken aback by that.
Yeah.
He's being confronted with that and going, whoa, you need to calm
Well,
down.
it's never
This
been
is-
called out like that
Yeah,
before.
no, Harold, no. Which is all things that he would actually learn. And like people collected trophies.
Yeah.
Scalp. I mean, this isn't war, but Blood Meridian. Not to say, but
The bear Jew.
in Blood. Well, yeah, but essentially in Blood Meridian, the book, it's the same thing. In Blood Meridian, it was a real thing in America, in Southern America, which is that there was a bounty essentially. If you brought the scalp of an Indian that you murdered, and you brought that to whoever, you would get money for it. And in Blood Meridian, it's a group of cowboys who do that. They just are scalping these Native Americans, brutally scalping them, and taking the scalps back and making money off of that. Like that's their job. It's crazy.
It's fucked up.
And just like thinking, and that carries through all the way to the Vietnam War, where I don't know if people were still hacking scalps off and stuff.
They
But
were taking.
there was some degenerate things happening.
Carving bones, things like
Yeah,
that.
there was some serious
Well,
shit.
Shane Gillis has I think it's Shane Gillis has like a great joke on one of his podcasts where he's talking about how you get like those crazy like guys from like the farms in America who just love killing, and you send them out into war, and it's like those guys are just insane. They actually enjoy just going around killing people. So yeah, I think that's something that's definitely funny. Is like because I think the general way the military is always sort of portrayed is like, oh, you're serving your country.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to sort of enjoy it. It's supposed to be seen as a responsibility.
A duty.
And so as soon as he's like, I get to kill, I get to do blah, 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 he's like, whoa, it's your duty.
It's a similar
It's not
thing.
pleasure.
It's a similar thing later on in Full Metal Jacket, I think, as well, where they're writing like "Born to Kill" on their helmets and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah. And when you mentioned the scene of like the guy falling as he's talking about, I think that because you didn't like how the film almost like, for example, with the way it was blocking, putting people in the center and stuff.
Yeah.
And we kind of had this conversation last night already, but I think the film is doing a very similar thing to what Wes Anderson does and a lot of his movies, where it reminds you that you're watching a movie. And that's another example of you doing that. Like, it's funny because
it's basically a giant wink at the audience type thing.
And it does
like,
it
it's
all
not
the time.
subtle.
Yeah.
My problem with it is more so I don't find it aesthetically pleasing that it's framed like that. And then the blocking. I don't enjoy looking at it as much as I think Wes Anderson, when he does it, it looks nice. I don't find this film very beautiful to look. I find the story and the themes beautiful, and I find some shots quite attractive, but I don't find the film itself pleasant to watch.
The reason I think the blocking, because I'm probably wrong about this, but I think a lot of the time when it's centered, like for example, there's that one shot where he's talking to his mom and he's right in the middle of like that carpet and he's centered between the things. I think that's supposed to show how authoritarian that relationship is almost, and that she is just like very controlling and he has no freedom. Whereas whenever he's with Maude, it's like
never
chaotic.
framed like
and
that.
even her room is like all over the place. So I think it's and another great example is with with his therapist. You know, they're framed facing away from each other, and there's like a perfectly symmetrical
in a
shot.
very empty, long room.
And I think it's intentional to convey, you know, what the themes are of the story. So it's not even just aesthetic. I think honestly, that's part of like why, even when they do like those center shots, they're so ugly because the room is like devoid of life. It's just horrid to look at.
But it's a really, I think in a lot of ways, it's a subtle movie, and it's
it's actually very.
And it's got so many amazing shots in it that I don't think, like, I can understand what you're saying, but it's clearly an intentional choice. And for me, I believe it's not in the movie that much, and it didn't impact my experience of it. Like, if every second scene was that, and you were seeing endless that, then I might go, for fuck's sake, you know. But it was limited enough where it wasn't distracting to me in my...
I don't know, I think I just caught a couple early on and then looked for them throughout the rest
Right.
because I didn't like the couple I saw at the start. And
Right.
Fair enough.
But some of the shots, like
some of the
him lying in the pool, great shot.
fucking that's my letterboxed
Oh yeah.
background.
Nice.
I think it's hilarious. It's funny too, that one.
The grave shot is got to be one of my favorite shots I've seen in the movie.
Well, then you've got
in
the Jaguar going up the hill at the end.
Yeah, the whole last scene is awesome. The last
yeah.
shot of the movie where he's playing the banjo on the hillside is great.
Yeah.
Well, and this certainly ties in thematically. Is they use scale really well. Hal Ashby uses scale really well.
That's a really good point.
Because a lot of the shots where there is movement and there is scenery changing, it is from far away, and that would definitely be some sort of commentary on the there is life and death. Look at how little you are, but how much you can make of this, and all those things. And I think that's a big thing that scale can use. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but in Wild Strawberries,
Yeah.
Ingmar Bergman uses scale incredibly to sort of denote how small of a place we or a role we play in this world, but how much we can make of it. And I think that's a great thing.
I'll do a cheeky shout out. I was introduced to Wild Strawberries because of the man, the myth, Joel Glazebrook. Gave me his DVD of that. He went, "Oh, Nick, you're getting into cinema. There's this fellow called Ingmar Bergman."
Well, I have a
Gave me his Wild
three-quarter.
Getting into cinema.
I have a 3/4 written review of, or like analysis of
But
Wild
you never
Strawberries. I
finished
just
it.
never finished it.
Fair enough.
Lots of notes still on it, but I think
It's a movie that I've really wanted to revisit
Yeah.
because I only saw it once years ago.
That's one of the main Bergman ones that I haven't seen.
It's really, really good.
What else haven't I seen? That's
it was the same year actually as I forget what's the one where he plays chess with death.
Seventh Seal.
Yeah, it's the same year as Seventh Seal.
Seventh Seal,
How
sorry.
crazy is that?
That's still my favorite Bergman.
Yeah, but how
Seventh Seal.
crazy is that? You make two films that are incredible in 1 year.
Yeah.
Like, fuck yeah.
It was actually hilarious that in film school, we had to watch different films in class, and one group got given Seventh Seal, and you had to do a presentation about it. And
Were they degenerate scum?
no,
they did
this
it well.
chick actually dressed up as Death, like came in with the cloak on and shit, and basically stood there while the rest of them were talking, and then would occasionally like chip in. It was very funny.
Awesome. Yeah, Seventh Seal's my favorite Bergman still.
Yeah.
Persona, bro.
Persona's up there. I think Persona's a better film. I just enjoy Seventh Seal more.
Agreed.
Anyway, we're talking about Harold and Maude.
Yes.
Maude.
I mean, to be honest, I think I've said basically everything I want to say about it. I think a rewatch would definitely make it better. Like, I think after this conversation and my continued stewing on it, I think it would be better. But, yeah, I think it's really, really good. And very cute, small movie that actually has a surprising amount to say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you could totally watch this and be like, yeah, it was sweet.
Yeah, and then move on. But there's actually quite a bit of stuff in there.
I'm pretty sure that's that. What did I say after we watched it? Like, that's a very.
It's a nice little movie,
Yeah, that's a
I
nice
think you
little
said.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But both of them were very good in it as well. They did their characters well, the two
Yeah.
actors.
Yeah, fucking whatever his name is, Harold's
Yeah, who is that guy?
Bud Court.
But
He's
for-
a freaky
Is that
looking
guy
guy.
go to Korea?
Bud Court has been in a lot. He was in Heat.
Bro,
and
he's
the
in
life,
But I'm a Cheerleader.
The Life Aquatic by Steve Zissou.
But I'm a Cheerleader. It's
Little
hilarious, bro.
Prince.
He was in-
MASH.
who the hell was he in Heat? What the
Heat.
fuck?
Might be a background.
Uncredited. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in The Life
What fuck?
Aquatic as Bill Ubel.
I've seen that movie too many times to not have recognized him in it.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I'm happy to wrap up.
yeah.
Isaac, Nick, anything more to say?
Not
there anything
particularly.
you want to say?
I don't really think so.
No, I don't think so.
Nick, you start, sir.
I'm actually going to give it a 9.
Wow.
I'm actually going to give it a 9. I was going to give it an 8, but I think if I watched it again, it would probably be a 9. So I'm just going to give it a 9 now.
Mm-hmm.
Cut out the middleman.
I'm at a 7.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it an 8.
There you go.
Nice.
Look at that.
Very good.
Harold and Maude.
Very solid indeed.
And now,
Very solid group of 3 movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a real
very-
strong set.
For overall, what was a relatively disappointing 2024, disregard like our own picks and stuff that's relevant, but 2024 overall was kind of underwhelming.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that I was really looking forward to that was very disappointing. Or just like kind of okay.
Yeah, meh.
Yeah, meh, exactly.
2024
But-
described. Meh.
But
next episode, well, before you get to your pick, I'm just going to say.
we have...
Next episode we got, will be the first episode of 2025,
Yes,
technically, FAP's calendar, whatever. We got a couple of great movies. We mentioned them last time. Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie, which we're all really looking forward
It's
to.
Little Timmy.
Little Timmy T. We're all big fans of Bob Dylan's music and associated
Chalamet's music as well, actually.
artists.
John is in the basement, mixing up the medicine.
And then
Oh,
we're also
baby.
doing The Brutalist, which we didn't talk about the Golden Globes. We might mention them next episode. We might mention them next episode, but Brutalist cleaned up pretty hard at the awards ceremony and is supposed to be dope as hell.
And it is 3.5 hours.
Yeah. So we're going to watch that when we have a whole day of nothing to do.
And alongside those two films, for my pick of the month is Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life.
Oh.
So 2019,
Very unexpected.
Yeah, what the fuck?
about an Austrian farmer
I would never have guessed that in a million years.
who refuses to fight for the Nazis in World War II.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm
We
awfully
did Terrence
excited
Malick
for it.
on the podcast, have we?
No.
Or was that just...
I
You
think
guys
that's
went and
just-
saw-
We watched Badlands and
we did Tree of Life.
And Tree of Life.
The House,
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had our little share of Terrence Malick outside of FAPS, but not in.
Yeah. Okay,
So
cool.
I'm excited.
That is interesting. And then that'll be the last episode before FAP's on tour.
We
where you
jettison off for
you
a
might
month.
get some bonus content. You don't know.
Who knows?
Anyway, yeah. Thank you for watching.
Awesome.
Go follow all the stuff and bloody,
Yeah.
you know.
Happy New Year. Check
Yep.
socials, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
Letterboxd.
And Letterboxd. We'll put all the links in the bio, and I'll share them on Instagram again soon.
Yeah. And read the fucking Anora paper that we'll link because it's really
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
good.